Greetings and welcome to another Tomorrow's World webcast. My name is Wallace Smith, and this topic, I know we talk about it a lot, but it's important. Our entire culture is shifting under our feet like an earthquake. And yet, some of the claims made about why it should shift are completely unfounded, and that is the topic. The fall 2016 issue of the New Atlantis has come out, and it sounds like some sort of weird New Age kind of journal. It's really not. It's actually a journal that explores the interaction between society and science and technology with really a lot of big name thinkers, and it has some fascinating articles from time to time. It has this particular paper, this special report that was submitted titled Sexuality and Gender: Findings from the Biological, Psychological, and Social Sciences. It was written by a Dr. Lawrence S. Mayer. He's an epidemiologist trained in psychiatry, and a name you've heard before here on the webcast, and I do believe also on our telecast, I think, Dr. Paul R. McHugh. He is a giant in psychiatry, associated with Johns Hopkins Hospital, and they actually mention here in the introduction, he's arguably the most important American psychiatrist of the last half century. Really, this fellow is a big name. He's someone certainly that if he's talking about his field, that it's worth listening to. Well, I can't read the whole paper, and it's tempting to do so, but let me just jump to some elements from their conclusion on this topic, this very important topic of sexuality and gender. They comment that when research touches on controversial issues, it's particularly important to be clear about precisely what science has and has not shown. Because part of what they're trying to say is that what science has and has not shown is being mixed up in the public's mind. And people are saying that things have been proven scientifically that haven't even come close to being proven. They've surveyed a whole lot of studies for the sake of putting this paper together. They point out for questions that are easier to study empirically, however, such as those concerning the rates of mental health outcomes for identifiable subpopulations of sexual minorities, for instance, homosexuals or transsexuals. It says the research does offer some clear answers. These subpopulations show higher rates of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and suicide compared to the general population. Now, they do consider very openly and apparently straightforwardly the hypothesis that maybe it's society's condemnation of those behaviors that is causing these mental health issues. They call it the social stress model. But they highlight that there is no science to support that social stress is the cause of these things, or even the majority cause of these things. Now, they do admit that there is some social stress on these populations, but to say that the social stress is causing the mental health issues, they say there's just not a study that supports that powerfully. That's a conclusion that is being assumed, but hasn't actually been shown. Now, I think one of the nuclear bomb statements in this particular paper, I'll just quote from them. They say some of the most widely held views about sexual orientation, such as the born that way hypothesis, simply are not supported by science. And people take that for granted today, that somehow you are born a homosexual or you're born a transsexual. And they're saying that just simply is not supported. There's science that shows there may be factors, biological or sociological, but factors that maybe influence a predisposition but don't make you that way, where there's no kind of choice, like you're actually born somehow that way. I appreciate their honesty because we're in a world where people are afraid of being honest and open. And even though they're talking about facts, they're talking about studies that people can look, people can research, people can reproduce. Regrettably, we're in a day and age where truth and facts are the kind of things we have to be brave to be able to talk about. Now, they point out one of their major concerns. They say, yet despite the scientific uncertainty, drastic intervention, this is about transsexuality and the uncertainty in terms of what's causing it, etc. It says, drastic interventions are prescribed and delivered to patients identifying or identified as transgender. That is, someone thinks they're transgender, and instead of really beginning to explore deeper issues to see if maybe that can be changed. Maybe the man can discover he's really a man Instead, suddenly they're doing surgery and they're using chemicals and hormones and all the rest, dramatically changing this person's life forever. They say this is especially troubling when the patients receiving these interventions are children. We read popular reports about plans for medical and surgical interventions for many prepubescent children, some as young as 6, and other therapeutic approaches undertaken for children as young as 2. And they go into detail about how really fundamentally unethical this is when you think about it, when they haven't even studied the long-term effects of these treatments, let alone truly founded in any kind of scientific discovery that this is even a good idea. The idea that we're doing this to children makes absolutely no sense. Why are we in a world that is full of such confusion that it takes courage to be able to simply state what studies say about homosexuality and transgender confusion? Because we have kicked out of our society the God of boundaries. You know, if you look in the Bible, in Genesis chapter 1, what does God do? He takes a world in confusion and draws a boundary between light and dark, between the moisture in the sea and the moisture in the air, and between the land and the ocean. It's one of my favorite verses I noted, Job 38:11, where it talks about God putting a boundary between the ocean and the land, and Him saying, you know what, stop there, this is the boundary. We've kicked the Lord of boundaries out of our society, and out of our civilization, and out of our moral consciousness. And when you remove all boundaries, all that's left is chaos. And kudos to these guys for pointing it out in their own particular way. Thanks for watching. Please check out all we have available at tomorrowsworld.org.